Hi everyone, I'm Hillary and today I'm going to teach you how to make beeswax coated cotton wraps. So it's a beautiful, functional, reusable, economical, and environmentally friendly option to your everyday plastic wrap. So you're probably wondering what made me interested in making these wraps in the first place. Well, I've been trying to reduce the amount of plastic I use on a day-to-day basis. I was realizing that I use a lot daily with sandwich bags, with grocery bags, with the way I wrap my food, that I could easily cut back and save a lot of garbage. One step I took was using reusable bags, so something that some of you might have already been doing on a day-to-day basis, but pretty easy to reduce a lot of plastic by using a reusable bag. Funny story, I was actually at the grocery store the other day using my handy bag, and as I was checking out, I wasn't paying attention to the bagger, and I was talking to the cashier, and I turned back to the bagger, and I realized he's individually wrapping each of my vegetables in a nice plastic bag and then putting them in the reusable bag. Needless to say, I had a mini minor freak out at him, and I was like, stop using the plastic, hold up. Then I politely explained to him that I was trying to reduce the amount of plastic I was using by bringing these bags, but that was just kind of a good example of how our culture is today, that we really focus on the convenience, the pleasing your customers, the ease of use, as opposed to thinking about the environmental impact of what you're doing. So that's one reason why I try to reduce the plastic. Another thing is that plastic is really wasteful. Over the past 10 years, we've been using more plastic than we have been using in the past 100 years combined. So this is a relatively new thing for us to be using so much plastic on a day-to-day basis. 50% of that plastic is actually that one-time use plastic. So that's the plastic bags, it's the grocery bags, the saran wrap, the things that we just throw away on a day-to-day basis. And then we produce enough plastic in a year to circle the earth 4 times. So that is a lot of plastic that builds up on a daily basis and then amounts to yearly totals like that. But worst of all is that it takes 500 to 1,000 years for plastic to naturally degrade. So it's just sitting in the landfills and it's building up, it's polluting our oceans and the earth. So we really should be taking steps to eliminate it if possible. So eliminating it with those plastic water bottles with your stainless steel water bottle, that's a super easy step. I eliminate plastic Tupperware with glass Tupperware. It's safe, you can wash it and clean it easily, it lasts forever, you can put it in the microwave. So that was an easy change for me. The grocery bags was an easy change for me, that was easy, but then I came to saran wrap and I realized, what do I do with my lovely handy saran wrap? I love using it, it's easy to use, it's cheap, I couldn't figure out what would replace it. After some searching online, I found the handy reusable beeswax coated fabric. It was kind of the first step towards eliminating that most of the plastic for me. But another thing I learned was saran wrap or plastic wrap is also has a lot of harmful chemicals. So the plastic itself is made with petroleum, so gas. We're using fossil fuels, it's depleting our ozone. So the way we make our plastic is dangerous in itself, but it also contains a lot of chemicals. And these chemicals leach into our food. You probably heard of BPA. You probably heard not to microwave your plastic. So these are some reasons. We know for sure that plastic has a lot of chemicals in them. We just don't know what are the long-term effects of these chemicals. So I have a baby on the way, and I think it's better to be safe than sorry, so that's why I've gone with this route. The beeswax is 100% natural, it's non-toxic, and it's relatively inexpensive. So I'd love to get started and show you how to make these wonderful wraps. So first off, you're going to need fabric. I got this fabric, it was scrap fabric laying around my house. I made some curtains for my baby's nursery, and this is what I had left over. The main thing is to cut it into a square. It doesn't really matter the size of fabric you use. This is a 9 by 9 inch fabric. You can do 12 by 12, 8 by 8, really whatever size you feel comfortable with. You will need your beeswax. I use these beeswax kernels. I guess they're not exactly called kernels, but they kind of are bean shaped. Works really well because they melt easily and you can easily spread them out. If you don't have those, you can always just use a block of beeswax and grate it onto a grater and then spread it out. I also use pans, so I have the aluminum covered pan is what I use to make it easier to peel off the wraps. You'll need some scissors. I use pinking shears, so as you can see they have the teeth in them. That's what makes the nice jagged edge on our fabric. It also prevents it from fraying. So it's not a requirement to have that, it's just a nice touch that I do onto the fabric. So we'll get started. The first part of our process is heating the oven to 185 degrees. So we'll pretend that we just heated the oven to 185 degrees. We don't want it too warm, just enough to melt the beeswax just a little bit so you can spread it out. Next, you have your lined baking sheet, and you will add your fabric to the baking sheet, so it's just right there in the center. Next, we will take the beeswax that I have, and you'll just lightly spread it around all of your fabric. It doesn't need to be perfect, it doesn't need to be a lot, just a little bit so it's spread out around it. Then we're going to put this into the oven for 5 minutes. So we'll pretend that we just put that into the oven for 5 minutes. Next, you'll take a paintbrush and you're going to spread the beeswax evenly out throughout your fabric. So it's just nice and spread out. You'll see it just evenly spreads out onto your fabric. And then last, you'll take your fabric and hang it onto a clothesline. I've made clotheslines just with string, a couple clothespins, whatever you have. If you don't have a clothespin, or if you can't make a clothesline, you can just really lay out the fabric and it really will just kind of cool off on its own. The main things we're focusing on with the wrap that you want to make sure is that the beeswax is completely melted when you spread out when you use the paintbrush to spread it out, and that it is also not too thick, because if it's too thick it'll start to peel off and break off. You just want a nice thin layer. So then you can see I had that the wrap will kind of be bendable and moldable. It folds over easily, and you can fold it into a sandwich bag, but the warmth of your hands is actually what seals it back together. So that's kind of the great thing about this. Then you're probably wondering, well, what do you do once you've used it once or there's food all over it? Well, it's a great thing about beeswax is that you just put it underneath the water, wash it off, it cleans itself pretty much. You can use a little soap if you want, but basically you just run it under water. If you want it to get its texture back a little bit, you can always kind of pop it in the oven to heat it up again, but you should be able to reuse it by just washing it and storing it in a safe place that keeps it nice and warm. Or not too warm, is what I meant to say. So really, what we're focusing on to make these wraps is super easy. It's just those steps. You cut your fabric, you put it on the pan, you add your beeswax, put it in the oven for about 5 minutes, take it out, evenly spread out the beeswax, and then you let it cool and dry. And that's all it takes for taking a step towards a more green, environmentally friendly option for your everyday saran wrap. So hopefully you learned a little bit more about the environment with Earth Day coming up, and hopefully you can take some small steps towards reducing the amount of plastic you use in your day-to-day life. I know it's been fun for me to try to think of alternatives, and hopefully you have just as much fun doing the same. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'd be happy to tell you how to do this in more detail. Have a great night.